Steve Jewin, MMA Mania.
All right, Leslie, you're on with Steve Jewin. Go ahead, Steve.
Leslie, it's a pleasure to talk to you again. First time we had an interview was 6 years ago after your Invicta fight with Jennifer Maia, and thank you for that.
It's so nice to talk to you again, Steve. Thanks for talking to me.
No problem. Hey, it's been 10 years since you've had a fight in Bellator, but the time is now and you're taking on Sinead Kavanagh in Thackerville. So what are your thoughts on returning to Bellator after all this time?
I'm pretty excited about it. I'm happy to be inside of a promotion that I feel like allows fighters to be more individuals and gives them more of an opportunity to grow inside of their personalities and with their expressions of themselves. And it's pretty cool. I know that Bellator and Scott Coker, that they have had a great relationship with my teammates and coaches and the Gilbert Melendez and Kerry Melendez. And so it's pretty cool to get to be kind of part of the circle.
It's also got to be interesting knowing that it's a completely different organization than it was back then, because as you mentioned, it's a Scott Coker organization, but back then it was Bjorn Rebney.
Yeah, back then it was my second professional fight. I was brought in as an opponent for Kerry Vera, who was married to Brandon Vera at the time. And so I wasn't, it's an entirely different situation. You're right. The promotion is different, but also my status is different. I'm no longer just a nameless professional fighter who they think that is going to make a good opponent for their person to beat. I actually have a name myself, and I'm coming in. Women's MMA has come so far. It's come incredibly far. And so it's not about, sorry, I'm going to be verbose and talk a whole bunch. But when I very first started for my very first fight, it was an amateur fight, and the announcer was having fun on the microphone, and it was after a month of training, so I almost didn't even want to take the fight, because I was like, what kind of skills am I even going to have? But I was like, but I really want to fight, so I'm going to do it. And I was a little worried it was going to be kind of a freak show, because there weren't a bunch of women who fought, but everybody loved a chick fight back then. And like I said, I'd only been training for a month. And so when we came out, the announcer was like, introducing luscious Leslie Smith.
Oh.
And then for my opponent, her name was Danette, and he said, delightful, Danette Benamino. And I was like, oh my God, is this happening? And yeah, totally. So that was when I first started in 2008. And even by the time that I got to Bellator, everyone there was respectful, and it was wonderful, and I definitely got treated like an athlete. The opportunities for women weren't really there. And like I said, I was brought in as an opponent for Kerry Vera. And so fast forward all the way to now, to where I'm an established fighter who's had a career for a decade. I'm fighting another woman who's being flown in from Ireland, who's had a two-sport career in combat sports. And it's a legitimate fight with legitimate skills, and we were both well-rounded enough to be fighting at the highest level here in Bellator. And so there's a lot of satisfaction that I'm getting from this return to Bellator.
Satisfaction also has to come from the fact that there's a decided Invicta feel to this card, with so many fights prominently featured. Juliana Vasquez versus Christina Williams, your fight with Sinead Kavanagh, the world title fight in the main event with Julia Butt versus Olga Rubin. It's very well stacked with top flight women.
Yeah, and that is very exciting, and it is another hallmark of the progress that's been made in MMA. I don't want to say women's MMA. That's not a term that I've ever really been fond of, because we're doing the exact same thing as the guys. It's just MMA, period. And like when we talked about the United States and the advancement of the United States, how the U.S. this country is so much better. We don't talk about the women's United States, the women's country. The country is better because of how far the women have come. So it's an exciting thing to get to be part of all the progress that MMA has made, and you get to feel, it's always a compliment when I get on an interview with somebody and they call me a pioneer of the sport. And forgive me if I sound like I'm tooting my own horn for saying that, since it didn't come up in this, but I do feel like I've been around for a long time, and it's really, satisfying again to get to be part of a sport where women are respected and acclaimed and successful.
Well, one of the ways I would use the word pioneer actually is that you fought all across the board, not only different promotions, but different weights as well. You've had a flyweight world title fight, you had a long career at bantamweight, and now you're fighting at featherweight. So is it just that you're that versatile, or are you just getting more comfortable with fighting at a heavier weight as your career progresses?
Well, I fought at 45 a couple times and at 40 as well. And usually the reason for me choosing whatever weight that I'm going at is just wherever the excitement was. When I first started, there were not a ton of opportunities. And I feel like the reason that women's 135-pound division was one of the first divisions to get to fight on a main stage, actually, I guess 45. That was one of the very first ones, was Cyborg and Gina Carano. I remember watching that fight right at the very beginning of my fight career. And I feel like one of the reasons for that is because the larger women were able to train with the guys and get the experience that they needed in order to hone the skills to come out and put on the kind of show that everybody wants to see. And then as more and more women have been training, that the skill level has risen, and we know the sky's the limit on that now. So I've just always been chasing wherever the most opportunities are, and in Bellator, 145 is definitely where the most opportunities are.
That's true. Well, there's definitely more opportunities in Bellator than in UFC because, as you mentioned, Chris Cyborg is, the one draw they seem to have in UFC. It's like a one-woman division.
Yeah, totally. I wish they would celebrate her and promote her more because of that.
Yeah, well, they've missed a lot of opportunities to celebrate and promote people. In fact, you left on a 2-fight win streak.
Indeed, I did. It's funny, people were pointing out that they were watching some bantamweight fights, and at the bottom of the screen, the little ticker came up saying that one of the best streaks at bantamweight right now, or at the time, I guess I should say, was Leslie Smith with a 3-fight win streak at bantamweight, because I had won, the one that I did not win was at 140 pounds, and so it didn't count as far as bantamweight goes. But yeah, it's pretty unusual for fighters to get cut when they are on not just a 2-fight winning streak, but when they got a fight of the night bonus and when they finished their opponent in the impressive fashion that I did. But things happen, and we got to do what we got to do and make the best out of them. And I definitely have spent enough time being bummed and salty and unhappy about things. But I'm just happy to get back inside the cage and do my thing again.
And we're happy to see it too. But before I move on to KO Kavanagh, I have to ask if you think part of the reason that your relationship with UFC soured is because you've always been, and I've especially noticed this on social media, like on Twitter, you've been outspoken about the rights of fighters over the rights of promoters.
Absolutely. The reason that I got cut from the UFC was because of retaliation by the UFC for my union organizing drive. That is 100% what happened, and I will definitely stand behind that statement and make it as many times as I need to. But I think that everybody who's paid attention knows it, and that I don't need to I don't need to dwell on that anymore. I did what I felt was right, and I'm happy with myself, and I can sleep well at nighttime. There's a lot of fighters who like to post things like live free or die and always take the hard road. And, I'd rather die on my feet than live on my knees, like those kinds of statements, And at least I get to know that I lived that. I did that. I did what I believed in, and I'm happy about it. And I paid the price for it. But I'm back where I want to be. I'm 2 weeks away from a fight. I feel freaking amazing. I've got a great team around me. I feel like I've got a promotion that is looking for the opportunity to promote me, and so maybe everything's working out the better for me right now.
It certainly seems to be, and as you say, Scott Coker was there when it was all about Gina Carano and Cyborg and the first huge women's MMA fight, so the feeling has to be right, being relation to Scott Coker now in Bellator MMA. It's like he understands this vision, so I applaud him for that, but I do have to ask one follow-up question before we get back to Kavanagh and this big fight you've got coming up on July 12th, and that's something that I heard Luke Thomas say on Sirius XM, and why he believes that a fighters union will never happen. He says that the structure of organizations like UFC, the way they award bonuses, like the Fight of the Night bonus that you mentioned, is to disincentivize people from unionizing, because if you can be a standout and earn more pay and get more bonus, then you're going to be looking out for your own interest and not for that of the fighters you're with.
Oh, yeah. Well, gosh, I mean, baseball was set up to disincentivize people to unionize for years. But they got their act together and they did it, and now they have one of the most comprehensive athlete care systems in all of sports. It's an old story. People in power don't want to give up power. They want to keep it, and they're going to set it up so that they do keep it, because they're the ones who control stuff. But you can't keep people down forever. People get smart, and they come together, and they raise their voice, and they make a difference. And so maybe I wasn't at the right time to get to be part of the chorus that makes the changes, but I'm glad that I got my 2 cents in, and now I'm just, I hope that he's wrong. I hope that Luke Thomas is wrong. I get what he's trying to say, but it's not an original, it's not anything new to the UFC. Literally everybody in power wants to keep their power, and they're going to find ways to disincentivize people coming together. If there wasn't this bonus structure and this climate of fear and just the way that MMA is set up, the rankings, if it wasn't set up like that, then yeah, there probably would be a union already. But just the fact that it is set up the way that it is, it doesn't mean that it's not going to happen, because I strongly believe that it will happen, and I am looking forward to the day when it does.
I am too, because, and I've had this argument myself with people on Twitter. I've said we need to care about the fighters during their fighting career, not after their career is over. And if that means unions or fighter safety or better drug testing policies, whatever it might be, let's think about the fighters now and not later. But I want to talk about now in terms of KO Kavanagh, because that's what's really now. Your fight with her and your thoughts on her, as you mentioned, being a 2-sport discipline combat sports artist.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great fight. I think she's the perfect opponent for me to get back in and make some headlines. I'm very excited about having an opponent who I anticipate is going to stand and bang with me, and she's going to be quite the canvas for me to paint with my skills.
Well, let's hope you do paint it with skill and not with your own blood like UFC 180.
Yeah, that's another situation. I was pretty bummed about that when it happened.
Yeah, you
But
didn't
it
seem like you
turns
wanted to
out,
stop fighting. The doctor was more interested in stopping the fight than you.
yeah, I was pretty angry about the stopping of the fight. That was one of my first tantrums that I've thrown in the cage, one of several to come afterwards. But, yeah, I don't have cauliflower ear this time. Plus, my MMA smarts is a whole lot higher up there. If I had been as smart as I am now, as soon as the doctor had looked at my ear, my mind would have said, all right, we can't stand and trade. I gotta neutralize this, take her to the ground, and finish her there. And so don't worry if any kind of situation does come up where a doctor looks at me, then I will be changing the situation so that nothing like that ever happens again.
Oh, I believe it. But I know Mauro Ranallo and Big John McCarthy on commentary are not going to be able to resist talking about it, especially since Sinead Kavanagh has a history with that herself. In her last fight with Janae Harding, she got split open by the ground by an elbow, and the doctor stopped that fight.
Yeah, there is an aspect. There's, women's fights tend to get stopped a little bit sooner than guys' fights, when it comes to a lot of blood. And
Do you think that's a double
I
standard
realize
then? That it's like unequal treatment then?
yeah, it's really hard to just say that because I know that the referees and the commission, that they're trying to do the right thing. Their job is to protect the athlete while they're inside of the cage with them and while fights are going on underneath their watch. And so a lot of decisions are at their discretion, and I'm not trying to say that they're all stereotyping and assuming that women can't take as much, but we're products of our culture and our environment, and yeah, I think that as time goes on, that people are going to realize more and more that women are not scared of blood, and that they're just as tough, if not tougher than the men, and that they can keep fighting generally.
And I think that goes for all sports as well, as I see what the USA women's soccer team is doing right now and how tough and how dominant they are and how they get banged up, bruised up, and they keep on playing. Nobody ever comes in and says, hey, doctor's got to stop this. You can't go back out there. You know what Megan Rapinoe would say if somebody told her that? She'd tell them to get the F out of her face.
Yeah, I hope they get paid more. I think it's freaking ridiculous. Have you seen the stuff about the pay discrepancies?
Yeah,
where they got
ridiculous.
some $60,000 bonus for what they've achieved, and the guys that they had done that would have gotten way more than that. I think it was 9 times more than that, or maybe I switched those numbers. Maybe it was a $90,000 bonus, and they would have gotten 6 times that if they'd been guys. The argument for so long for paying the women's soccer team less has been that they just aren't as entertaining and that they don't bring as many views and as many eyes to the sport. And the statistics have proven that to be 100% wrong. That women are bringing in the viewership and they're bringing in the money and they're being more successful and they're still getting paid less. And man, it makes me kind of angry even thinking about it. So I hope that things change and that they get the money that they deserve. And I, man, I'll stand behind them any day. Those women are beasts.
I 10,000% agree with that. I wish I could say even more how much I agree with that, but it's ridiculous if the argument is they're not as big a draw as the men, because the ratings for this run they're on right now are just crushing everything else in live sports. Like that win over France, I'm guaranteeing that was #1 on Nielsen for the most watched live sports program that night.
Yeah, that's literally been the reason that they haven't gotten paid as much, is that people are claiming that they don't get as much viewership. So I'm glad they're proving that wrong.
And there's going to be another chance to prove that very argument wrong with this card here in Thackerville. Stacked up top to bottom with some of the best women in the sport. And you're a contender now, being inserted right into this picture with a win streak, fighting in the featherweight division and fighting an established fighter in Bellator's featherweight division like K.O. Kavanagh. So a win could put you in the hunt to face the winner of Olga Rubin and Julia Budd.
Yes, that's the goal. That's the plan.
Anybody else that you want to fight besides the winner of that fight?
whoever earns the right to fight me after that.
I know you'll go out there and make sure that you handle business in the cage, but with this time off before you had this fight at Bellator 224 in Thaggerville, what's changed the most in your training and your approach to fighting?
I'm definitely a lot smarter and a lot more intelligent about the way that I'm fighting. I've gotten enough time to get a wider perspective and see things from a wider angle, and so I have a better understanding of what I need to do, and I've got the patience to wait for the right time to do it, and I've also got the gas and the energy to do it when it's the right time.
Was 2 years too long, though? Do you think there's going to be any in-ring rust, cage rust when you get in there?
I don't believe in ring rust. I don't think that it exists. At least it doesn't for me. I think that maybe some people get up in their heads and they mind fuck themselves a little bit before they get into a fight, but that can happen with anybody, with any fight, with any opponent, anytime. My biggest thing is that I just want to go in there and have fun.
I expect this fight in Thackerville will be really fun as well. So, Leslie, I really appreciate the time. Thank you so much. And anything you would like to plug, teammates, sponsors, whatever, please go ahead.
All right. Well, I definitely am the most excited for Gilbert Melendez's fight in the UFC on the 6th. That's going to be amazing, and I'm super excited for him. And then Carrie Melendez, getting to watch her come back to the cage. It's definitely going to happen in the next couple of months, and so keep your eyes out for that. Another one of my teammates, Shinju Auclair, she's a risen fighter, and she got hurt before her last fight, but she's got another fight on her contract, and I know she's going to come out and kill it, so I want everyone to keep their eyes open for that. And I got another teammate, Hyder Emil. He fights in Bellator too, and he just actually had a fight outside of Bellator scheduled, but his opponent pulled out, and so I want people to keep their eyes out for him. One of my other training partners, Chelsea Chandler, she's fighting in Invicta. She just had a great win in Invicta, and she's looking to make a title run for the bantamweight belt in Invicta, so I want people to keep their eyes out for her.
I appreciate the time, Leslie. Thank you so much. Much success to you, and hopefully a fantastic fight with KO Kavanagh here at Bellator 224.
Great. Thanks for your time.
Oh, no, thank you. And Dan, thank you as well.
All right. Thanks, Steve.